Hey everyone, I'm back to what you see on the screen. I'm back to what if Anakin went to overpower Obi-Wan, right? Yeah. Yeah, what if Anakin went with Obi-Wan to kill General Grievous? I'll have the channel in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I am take over. Star Wars Crew to take over. Don't forget to check out my reaction playlist to see more reactions in the future. If you like to see more in the future, let's get started.
Everything would be the same as in the original timeline until what if Anakin had gone with Obi-Wan to Utapau to catch Grievous? What would happen then? Let's find out. So in this timeline, everything would be the same as in the original timeline until the Jedi Council discusses tasking Anakin with spying on Palpatine. In the original timeline, as evidenced by the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi Council did not listen to Obi-Wan when he asked them not to make Anakin spy on the Chancellor. But in this timeline, the Council does listen to Obi-Wan. They see that Anakin is not fit to carry out spy work on a man he sees as a very close friend. And so, in this timeline, Anakin is not burdened with that task. But even in this timeline, Anakin is made a council member upon Palpatine's request and is denied the rank of Master, much to Anakin's frustration. So, not long after all that, clone intelligence discovers that Grievous is hiding out on Utapau. And to capture the cyborg general, Obi-Wan and Anakin are sent to the remote planet of Utapau. Anakin not having any engagements on Coruscant is the main reason he is sent with Obi-Wan here, but on top of that, Obi-Wan had noticed over the prior days that Anakin was clearly going through something, so Obi-Wan felt it would be good to get Anakin away from Coruscant for the time being. And as evidenced by the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, Anakin also wanted the same. And so the two Jedi set off to Utapau to put Grievous' lightsaber skills to the test. Arriving on Utapau, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi found themselves enveloped in a sense of eerie calm, a stark contrast to the bustling energy of Coruscant they had just left behind. For Anakin, the change of scenery provided a much-needed reprieve from the weight of the disturbing visions haunting him and the political machinations that seemed to constrict his every move on Coruscant. The open skies and the desolate landscape of Utapau allowed his troubled thoughts to drift away, if only for a moment. And as for Obi-Wan, ever the focused and determined Jedi, he was primarily focused on the task at hand, which was finding General Grievous and hopefully putting an end to the Clone Wars. However, beneath his stoic and unwavering exterior, Obi-Wan harbored deep concerns for his friend and former apprentice. He noticed the shadows that lingered in Anakin's eyes, the unspoken worries that seemed to cloud his judgment. Obi-Wan hoped that this mission, away from the intrigues of the Republic capital, would serve as a balm for Anakin's troubled soul. Anyways, just like in the original timeline, Obi-Wan soon finds out where Grievous is held up, with the help of the Port Administrator Tion Medon, who was the Padawan that Obi-Wan spoke to in the original timeline as well. And following this, moving with the grace and stealth only Jedi could muster, Anakin and Obi-Wan navigated the labyrinthine passageways of the complex, guided by the Force and their wits. And soon enough, the two Jedi found themselves perched atop a ledge, overlooking a grand chamber where Grievous, in all his menacing glory, was indeed holding court with his Lord commanders and separatist leaders. The moment was ripe with destiny. The culmination of countless battles, strategies, and sacrifices was finally at hand. With a nod to each other, acknowledging the journey that had brought them here, Anakin and Obi-Wan prepared to make their dramatic entrance. They left from the lodge, landing with a flourish that would have earned the envy of the most seasoned acrobat. Obi-Wan then straightened up, a wry smile playing on his lips. With his characteristic charm that almost belied the seriousness of their mission, Obi-Wan greeted the startled Grievous. "Hello there," Obi-Wan said, his voice echoing through the chamber. Hearing this, Anakin, who had landed almost as gracefully as his old master, couldn't help but let a small, appreciative smirk across his face. And in response to this dramatic display, Grievous, the embodiment of hubris and mechanical menace, met Obi-Wan's jovial greeting with a disdainful snarl. "Ah, the negotiator and General Skywalker. We meet again. I was hoping for a challenge," Grievous mocked. The General's elite Magna Guards, with their electro-staffs crackling in anticipation, then moved to confront the two Jedi Generals, confident in their programming and the prowess that had seen them through countless skirmishes. However, the Magna Guards were not prepared for the synchronized ballet of destruction that Anakin and Obi-Wan had perfected over the years. With swift movements, the Jedi dispatched the droids with such efficiency that it bordered on the artistic, their lightsabers weaving through the air in a blur of blue. But, undeterred by this, Grievous unveiled his own weapons, igniting 4 lightsabers with a dramatic flourish. The spinning blades, a whirlwind of deadly destruction, advanced towards the Jedi in a display meant to intimidate. Yet, Anakin and Obi-Wan stood their ground, unshaken. What followed was a spectacle of lightsaber mastery as the 2 Jedi took on Grievous with relative ease. Grievous attempted to overwhelm his opponents with his mechanical agility and the sheer force of his attacks, but Anakin and Obi-Wan, landing shoulder to shoulder, were no match for Grievous. In a series of moves that almost seemed choreographed, Anakin and Obi-Wan systematically dismantled Grievous' offensive. With a deft maneuver, Obi-Wan managed to sever one of Grievous' arms, while Anakin, capitalizing on the general's momentary shock, disarmed another. The battle's momentum then quickly and decisively shifted, as Grievous, now halved in offensive capabilities, became increasingly desperate. The final act of this tragicomic ballet saw the Jedi duo disarm Grievous of his remaining limbs with such swiftness that the general barely had time to process his predicament before he found himself limbless, sprawling on the floor in a most undignified manner. Unable to flee, as was his usual mode of operation, Grievous...
Yeah. How dignified? No. I'll be back in a minute. Don't put this into recycling. Be back. And I'm back. But yeah. How uncivilized.
Could only seethe in impotent rage, his eyes burning with malice, but his body rendered harmless. And then looking upon the sight, Anakin, with a mockingly serious tone that belied the amusement twinkling in his eyes, leaned in closer to the defeated general. "It seems you have much to learn, General," Anakin said. Then later, with General Grievous arrested and his mechanical limbs in disarray, Obi-Wan Kenobi swiftly took command of the situation on Utapau, coordinating the Republic forces in a final push against the remaining droids. Meanwhile, as Obi-Wan was leading the clones, Anakin Skywalker found himself partaking in a crucial Jedi Council meeting, thanks to the wonders of holographic communication. Master Yoda, Mace Windu, and other council members deliberated on their next moves, acutely aware of the war's shifting tide, yet oblivious to the shadows that crept ever closer to the heart of the Republic. And during this meeting, a familiar and welcome figure joined the assembly via hologram, Ahsoka Tano, aboard the Tribunal Star Destroyer. Just like in the original timeline, at this point, Ahsoka would have captured Maul and would be on her way back to Coruscant as she joins this council meeting. And Ahsoka's appearance brought a visible lift to Anakin's spirits, a sentiment evidently reciprocated by Ahsoka. Once the council's discussions began to wind down and the other Jedi faded from the holoconference, leaving only Ahsoka and Anakin, Ahsoka requested they switch to Anakin's personal comlink to talk away from potentially prying ears. There was an urgency in Ahsoka's expression as she said this, a gravity that suggested the importance of her message. And Anakin, sensing the seriousness of the moment, agreed without hesitation. And as they reconnected through a secure line, Ahsoka hesitated for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Anakin," she began, her voice a mixture of concern and resolve. "There's something Maul told me on Mandalore, something about Darth Sidious." She then recounted Maul's words, how Sidious would soon destroy the Republic and how Maul had orchestrated the conflict on Mandalore in a bid to throw Anakin into a trap. The intention, Maul claimed, was to prevent Anakin from fulfilling a destiny long shaped by Sidious himself, to become the Sith Lord's apprentice. And after revealing everything that Maul had said, Ahsoka watched Anakin closely, her message delivered, a heavy silence hanging between them. A few short moments later, Anakin, his brow furrowed in contemplation, shook his head slightly, as if to dispel Ahsoka's words. "Maul is trying to deceive us, Ahsoka," he stated, the skepticism clear in his voice. "It's impossible, it doesn't add up. Maul is grasping at straws, trying to divide us," Anakin said. Ahsoka, however, persisted, her tone somber. "Anakin, the fear I sensed from Maul as he spoke those words, it was real. He was genuinely terrified, even asking to be killed rather than be brought to Coruscant in the end." She then paused, letting the gravity of her words sink in. "I believe Maul thinks what he's saying is true, whether it is or not." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken questions and doubts. Anakin's mind raced as he tried to process the information, the pieces of a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, swirling in confusion. "Did Maul mention who Sidious is?" Anakin finally asked, clinging to the hope of a tangible lead. But in response, Ahsoka simply shook her head, her image flickering slightly across the comlink. No, he didn't, Anakin, but we'll question him thoroughly once he's brought to Coruscant. Anakin nodded. You'll know more soon then. I'll be on Coruscant when you arrive, Ahsoka, Anakin said. As they prepared to end the call, Ahsoka's voice softened. Be careful, Anakin, she said. In response, Anakin offered a small, reassuring smile. I will. See you soon, Ahsoka. With the connection severed, Anakin stared into the distance, the serene landscape of Utapau doing little to calm the storm of thoughts raging within him. Even here, far from the political intrigue and machinations of Coruscant, the shadows of doubt and confusion found him, threatening the fragile peace he sought. The revelations from Maul pressed heavily upon him, a reminder that true peace was perhaps just an elusive dream. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, with General Grievous's capture signaling a possible end to the war, Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Stacey Tin, and Agent Kolar prepared to confront Chancellor Palpatine. Their goal was to ensure that he relinquished the emergency powers granted to him at the beginning of the crisis. This happens in the original timeline as well. When Anakin rushes over to Mace to tell him that Sidious is Palpatine, Mace Windu in the original timeline tells Anakin that they are on their way to make sure that Palpatine gives up his emergency powers, to which Anakin says that Palpatine will not give up his powers. But that does not happen here, and the Jedi are going to Palpatine, fully believing that he's just an old man, and not a Sith Lord. Anyways, back to the story. As the Jedi boarded a shuttle and flew towards Palpatine's office, Mace Windu, peering across the Coruscant skyline as nightfall approached and the light began to fade, felt a deep sense of impending doom. It was a foreboding feeling, one that seemed to echo in the Force. Meanwhile, back on Utapau, Obi-Wan Kenobi, after dealing with the remaining droid forces, found Anakin Skywalker lost in thought. Approaching his friend and former apprentice, Obi-Wan initiated a conversation that quickly moved from the implications of the war's end to more personal matters. Anakin, feeling the weight of his recent conversation with Ahsoka, mentioned obliquely the depth of their conflict, hinting at uncertainties that went beyond the battlefield. Did we even know who we were fighting against all this time? Anakin mused aloud, a question laden with more meaning than Obi-Wan could have guessed. Sensing the shift in tone, Obi-Wan gently implored, offering Anakin a chance to share what was troubling him. It was a delicate moment, bridged by years of camaraderie and trust. And Obi-Wan, fully aware of Anakin's relationship with Padme Amidala, hoped that this conversation might finally allow them to address the elephant in the room without pretense. However, Anakin's revelation was not what Obi-Wan expected. It had nothing to do with Padme Amidala. Instead, Anakin recounted Ahsoka's transmission, detailing Darth Maul's ominous warnings about Darth Sidious and the trap set for Anakin. Obi-Wan, taken aback by the severity of these claims, struggled to maintain his composure. Maul is a Sith, Anakin, Obi-Wan finally said, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of concern. Deception is their nature. We must not let his words sway us without proof, Obi-Wan said. Anakin nodded, a part of him wanting to cling to Obi-Wan's reasoning, to believe that Maul's forewarnings were merely manipulations of the Sith. Yet, seeds of doubts had been planted, and they lingered, resistant to the assurance offered by his mentor. Obi-Wan then prepared to say something else, but before he could get the words out, Obi-Wan and Anakin, both Jedi, felt a sudden, chilling sensation sweep over them. It was as if the Force itself was trembling, a premonition of dark events yet to unfold, impending doom, death, betrayal. These feelings washed over Anakin and Obi-Wan with startling clarity. And then, as Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi grappled with the unsettling premonitions that coursed through their minds, an eerie silence enveloped Utapau. The clones, who had been bustling with activity and chatter just moments before, suddenly ceased all communication. Their sudden, unnerving stillness was punctuated by a collective shift in their focus towards the two Jedi. Seeing this, Anakin and Obi-Wan exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the unnerving atmosphere that had swiftly descended upon them. And then, before Anakin and Obi-Wan could do anything, the clones turned on them. They began attacking the two Jedi. And amidst this sudden chaos, Anakin noticed that the clones were firing stun blasts at him, while Obi-Wan was targeted with lethal intent. But, despite the confusion and betrayal they both felt, Anakin and Obi-Wan, using their Jedi reflexes, deflected the barrage of blaster fire with their lightsabers. And with no time to ponder on the reasons behind this sudden turn of events, Anakin and Obi-Wan dashed to a nearby speeder, their movements a blur of desperation and determination. As they got into the speeder and sped away, the air crackling with the energy of blaster fire. The clones adjusted their aim with terrifying precision. Anakin, piloting the speeder with a skill that had made him almost a legend, made a split-second decision. He steered the speeder towards one of Utapau's vast sinkholes, a plan forming in his mind. As they approached the edge of the sinkhole, the realization that they were about to be hit became inevitable. Yet, Anakin's strategy was as bold as it was risky. He intended to use the ensuing fire and smoke from their anticipated hit as a cover, an act of misdirection. And soon, just as Anakin expected, they were hit, smoke and fire rising from the machine. But right before the speeder plummeted into the abyss, Anakin and Obi-Wan ejected at the last possible moment, their bodies slicing through the air with a grace that defied the violence of their situation. Below them, the dark waters of the sinkhole loomed, a welcome respite from the chaos above. To the clones, it would appear as though their targets had been consumed by the flames, a fiery end to the Jedi's valiant resistance. So, to understand what happened, let us go back to when Mace and the Jedi arrived in Palpatine's office. The Jedi Masters, having approached Palpatine with the demand to relinquish his emergency powers, found themselves entangled in a web far more complex and sinister than they had anticipated. Palpatine, with his characteristic cunning and foresight, had anticipated such a move from the Jedi. Yet, in this altered timeline, without Anakin's presence to sway the tide, Palpatine adjusted his strategy. As the Jedi Master stood in Palpatine's office, Palpatine revealed his true nature with a chilling grace. He ignited his crimson saber and said the following: "The Jedi are traitors. You and your order have committed treason against the Republic, Master Windu." And with these words, Palpatine initiated a deadly attack. His Sith identity, no longer a shadow, but a glaring, terrifying reality. A reality that the Jedi Masters understood far too late. The battle that ensued was fierce and desperate. Palpatine, unburdened by the need to manipulate Anakin's loyalties, unleashed the full extent of his dark powers. The Jedi, taken aback by the revelation and the sudden onslaught, fought valiantly but were ultimately unprepared for the ferocity of the Dark Lord of the Sith. One by one, the Jedi fell, with the battle quickly narrowing to Mace Windu and Palpatine. Master Windu, a formidable warrior in his own right, managed to gain the upper hand in their saber duel, forcing Palpatine into a corner, but the Sith Lord, ever resourceful, turned to his mastery of the Force in the place of his lightsaber. So, side note, in the DVD commentary for Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas did state that Mace Windu won the saber duel fair and square, but George Lucas did go on to say that Palpatine was pretending to be weak to make Anakin turn on Windu in the original timeline. So here, with Anakin not there, Palpatine has no reason to pretend or to make himself look weak. Anyways, back to the story. With a vicious surge of Force lightning, Palpatine overwhelmed Mace Windu, finally sending the Jedi Master crashing through a broken window in Palpatine's office, and Mace Windu fell into the abyss of Coruscant's night. As Mace Windu's form disappeared into the darkness, Palpatine did not sense the extinguishing of the Jedi Master's presence in the Force. But whether out of arrogance or the chaotic maelstrom of the moment, Palpatine gave it no further thought. It didn't really matter. With the Jedi Masters defeated, Palpatine seized the moment to enact his most insidious plan, Order 66. Framing the Jedi's attempt as an act of treason, he portrayed himself as a victim of the Jedi's supposed betrayal. This narrative, carefully crafted and executed with precision, justified the immediate and ruthless extermination of the Jedi across the galaxy. And as the clones turned on the Jedi commanders, Palpatine's thoughts turned to Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, whose destiny was intertwined with his own ambitions. In the absence of Skywalker's fall to the dark side at this juncture, Palpatine again adapted his plans. His plan was always to rediscover the ancient Sith technique of essence transfer, a dark art lost to time due to the actions of Darth Gravid. Palpatine's original design was to eventually transfer his spirit into Anakin's body after making Anakin a Sith apprentice. But here, Palpatine changes his plan. His intention now was to capture and imprison Anakin, keeping him alive until the technique of essence transfer could be mastered, and used to transfer Palpatine's spirit into Anakin's body, thus extending the Sith Lord's life and power. And so, even in this timeline, with all the changes, all was proceeding per Sidious's plan. And now, let's get back to Utapau. So Obi-Wan and Anakin, having narrowly escaped death by plunging into the abyss of a vast sinkhole, found themselves ensnared in a dire predicament. As they submerged into the dark cold waters below, the two Jedi harnessed their training, relying on their ability to control their breathing and remain calm under pressure. Their adeptness at using the Force to augment their physical capabilities allowed the two Jedi to navigate the murky depths and evade detection by the clones who believed their targets vanquished. And when the clones reported Anakin Skywalker's supposed death to Palpatine, who wanted Anakin alive, Palpatine was not pleased, but he would soon come to accept it. If Anakin was so easily killed, then he was not worthy to contain his spirit, Palpatine told himself. And so in Anakin's absence, Palpatine would decide to enact Project Necromancer instead, which involved Palpatine cloning his own body and then transferring his spirit into his own younger clone body. But...
Oh yeah. That was in, I think, the games or the comics. But if you've seen The Rise of Skywalker episode 9, then you will see. He did on episode 9 though. If you've seen The Rise of Skywalker, yeah, you'll see this clone. Or in the games, or in the movie. Or in like the comics, but yeah. Like Star Wars Battlefront. No, the Force Unleashed 2 with Starkiller was cloned, yeah.
As all this was happening, Anakin and Obi-Wan were alive and well, swimming through the underwater tunnels that riddled Utapau's geological structure. Anakin and Obi-Wan exploited their intimate knowledge of the Force to sense the safest path forward. The innate connection they shared with the living energy around them guided their movements, steering them away from potential threats and towards a hidden grotto. Within this secluded refuge, the two Jedi found an old maintenance shuttle, and despite its dilapidated appearance, the shuttle was operational, a testament to the resilience of its design. And without wasting any time, Anakin and Obi-Wan boarded the shuttle. Anakin, his hands steady on the controls despite the turmoil within, piloted the shuttle out of the grotto and into the open sky, skillfully awaiting further detection. As they ascended, both Jedi were aware that their ship might be being tracked, but the pressing need to escape Utapau superseded the risk, and they couldn't afford to give it much thought. And so, immediately after exiting Utapau's atmosphere, they made the decision to jump to hyperspace, for a point in space far from the prying eyes of the clones. And after jumping into hyperspace, the two Jedi attempted to contact fellow members of their order, including Ahsoka Tano, but Ahsoka was not reachable. As a side note, this would be because the events about the Tribunal Star Destroyer would proceed just as it did in the original timeline. By this point, the Tribunal Star Destroyer would have been destroyed, and Ahsoka and Rex would be far from being able to communicate with anyone. But anyways, after failing to contact Ahsoka, Anakin would contact Senator Amidala, who would respond. Padme would tell Anakin that she's been trying to contact him for a while now, and would ask Anakin what happened. To which Anakin would say that there is no time to explain and that he's not sure, just that the clones have turned on the Jedi. And at this point, Anakin would start to see most revelations in a new light, but without dwelling on these thoughts, Anakin would ask Padme to contact Bail Organa, to try and see if he can help them both. And seeing as how there was no time to discuss the situation further, Padme would agree, and she would immediately contact Bail Organa. Padme would have of course argued that she herself could help them, but neither Anakin nor Obi-Wan would want to put Padme at risk, and so they waited for Bail Organa to arrive. And soon enough, Bail Organa would contact the two Jedi, and would transmit coordinates where he can pick up the two Jedi. And upon Anakin and Obi-Wan's rendezvous with the Tantive-4, Bail Organa's ship, they found themselves in the company of Master Yoda, whom Bail Organa had already rescued from Kashyyyk in the wake of the devastating Order 66, just like in the original timeline. The reunion of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Master Yoda would be marked by a shared understanding of the terrible betrayal they have suffered. Bail Organa would then relay the harrowing news to Anakin and Obi-Wan in more detail than Padme was able to. Palpatine had declared the Jedi as traitors to the Republic, enacting a galaxy-wide purge under the guise of Order 66. Obi-Wan, grappling with disbelief and betrayal, voiced the question that haunted the recesses of his mind. How could the clones betray us so? They fought with us and died by our sides for years now. Hearing this, Anakin, his expression darkening with the weight of realization, figured out how the clones could so easily betray the Jedi. It's the inhibitor chips, he said solemnly. Fives tried to warn us he discovered the truth, but we didn't listen. The Mystery of Fives, a clone trooper who had uncovered the sinister purpose of the inhibitor chips, cast a shadow of regret and missed opportunity over the group. Grandmaster Yoda, the very embodiment of the Jedi's wisdom and strength, expressed a sorrowful acknowledgement of their collective oversight. Blinded, we were, he admitted. Wall was right, Anakin whispered, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The Sith Lord we've been searching for it. It's Palpatine. Indeed, we were blind, Master Yoda, Anakin said. This declaration hung in the air, a chilling truth that had reshape their understanding of the enemy they faced. But before they could delve deeper into this revelation, Bale interrupted. "I have been summoned to Coruscant," he announced. "Palpatine has called an emergency session of the Senate." Determined to confront this unprecedented threat head-on, the three Jedi decided to accompany Bale to Coruscant. Also for Anakin, beyond facing Palpatine, he was also worried for Padme, even though she said she would be fine. But anyways, soon enough, the Jedi arrived on Coruscant, and utilizing Bale's senatorial privileges, they bypassed the stringent security measures that had now enveloped the planet. And then, as they discreetly approached the Jedi Temple, what they found was not the aftermath of a swift defeat, but a stronghold under siege. The Jedi Temple, a bastion of the Jedi Order's resilience, had not fallen easily, and the reason for that is, unlike in the original timeline, here, Anakin was not there to lower the temple's defenses so that the clones and himself could go in and kill all the Jedi. And so, with the defenses in full effect, the 25,000-year-old temple, constructed to withstand assaults of this magnitude, remained a fortress amidst the chaos, with the clones trying and failing to get in.
Yeah.
But this still meant that the temple was being kept under close watch, and faced with the daunting task of entering the besieged temple, Master Yoda proposed a solution. The Grand Master directed Bail Organa to take them to a very mundane-looking alleyway, a little further out from the Jedi Temple. Anakin and Obi-Wan, puzzled by this, sought clarification, and in response, Yoda's eyes, hinged and wise, sparkled with a hint of cunning. "More than one way into the temple, there is," he revealed. Complying with Yoda's request, Bill navigated the Tantive 4 to a nondescript alleyway, far removed from the prying eyes of the clone forces. And there, the three Jedi disembarked, their figures shrouded in the shadow of Coruscant's sprawling cityscape. Master Yoda then thanked Bale for his help, and then led Anakin and Obi-Wan into a secret entrance to gain access to the temple. These hidden entrances were only known to a few, and Obi-Wan and Anakin saw at this moment why that was. So side note, this secret entrance would be the same one that Jocasta used to enter the temple after Order 66 in the Vader comics. Anyways, after a short while of walking into this secret entrance, the three Jedi emerged through a statue within the temple, and the sight that greeted them was one of solemnity and resolve. The temple, though a sanctuary, bore the scars of the ongoing siege, and within its walls a congregation of Jedi, among them Shakti, stood as the guardian of what remained of their order. And upon seeing Master Yoda, Anakin and Obi-Wan, Shakti approached them, her voice steady and composed. "Master Yoda, Obi-Wan, Skywalker, you survived. The Force is with you," Shakti said. Obi-Wan, his expression grave, replied, "We have, Master, but I'm not sure for how much longer." And then Anakin added the following: "We've learned the true identity of the Sith Lord we've been seeking. It's Palpatine. He's been orchestrating this war from the beginning." Hearing this, Shakti nodded. Anakin's revelation was not surprising at this moment, but she quickly spoke up. "Then we must act swiftly. The fate of the Republic and the Jedi Order, or at least what remains of us, hangs in the balance," Shakti said. And then Grandmaster Yoda outlined a strategy. "Confront Sidious, we must," he said. And hearing this, Anakin, fueled by a desire for action, suggested the following: "We should march towards the Senate, all of us in the temple, confront the clones head-on, and then stop the Chancellor." In response to this, Yoda shook his head, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Expose our plan, that will. And then following that, even if we manage to expose Palpatine's lies to the Republic, flee and command the Separatist army, he can. A different approach we need." Yoda then continued, "Into the Senate building we will go. We will destroy Sidious, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Shakti, and I," Yoda said to all those gathered. And the group, although skeptical but trusting in Yoda's wise words, agreed to the plan. Yet, before they could set their plan in motion, Yoda paused, a hint of regret coloring his voice. "Before we go to the archives, I must go. Need to retrieve something. I do." Master Yoda then momentarily excused himself from the gathered Jedi and ventured alone into the hallowed and typically off-limits section of the Jedi archives. There, amidst the ancient texts and artifacts, Yoda sought out a particular item, his movements purposeful yet heavy with an uncharacteristic hesitance. And soon enough the Grand Master found what he was looking for. As he gazed upon the object of his search, a fleeting shadow of doubt crossed his mind. "Right, this feels not. But demands it, the situation does," Yoda murmured to himself, contemplating the path he was about to take. Returning to Anakin, Obi-Wan, Shakti, and the other Jedi, Master Yoda appeared with an
They're sometimes doing the right thing means you have to do something dark to do something good.
That immediately drew everyone's attention, a scepter. Anakin inquired about the nature of the artifact, and Yoda's reply was cryptic. Sometimes fight fire with fire we must, Yoda stated, a complex mixture of wisdom and necessity reflected in his eyes. Yoda then entrusted the scepter, which was within a bag, to Obi-Wan, as it would be easier for Obi-Wan with his tall stature to carry it as opposed to Master Yoda. And then, with the artifact in hand, the four Jedi was ready to make their way over to Palpatine. But before doing so, they had to put on a few disguises. And then, a short moment later, with their unconventional disguises in place, Obi-Wan and Anakin donned in Clone Trooper armor, Shakti's features obscured by Clone Trooper armor and a hood, and Master Yoda ingeniously concealed within a bag on Anakin's back. And with these disguises in place, the Jedi set forth from the temple to the Senate building. Also, side note, if you think their disguises are a bit strange, in the original timeline, as evidenced by the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan disguises himself as a hunchback while carrying Yoda as the Grand Master of the Jedi Order pretended to be a baby. They do this to kill some clones, and this happens shortly before Obi-Wan and Yoda enters the temple, after Order 66 in the original timeline. Anyways, in this alternate timeline, using their disguises and their adept use of the Force to suggest and misdirect, all four Jedi soon entered the Senate building with surprising ease, and upon entering Chancellor Palpatine's office, utilizing their disguises, the group encountered no resistance, thanks in part to Yoda's swift handling of Palpatine's red guards. And at this point, after having dealt with the guards, the four Jedi stood face to face with Palpatine, who was flying by Mazameta. Palpatine then greeted Yoda and the other Jedi with a veneer of civility that thinly veiled the malice beneath. The exchange between Master Yoda and Palpatine was
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Was fraught with the weight of impending conflict. Palpatine addressed the assembled Jedi, including Anakin, with a mixture of amusement and disdain, confident in his supremacy. In fact, seeing Anakin alive made him quite happy, not because he wanted him as an apprentice, but this meant that he could, one day, transfer his spirit into Anakin's body after capturing him. Because there was no way the four Jedi could beat him, Palpatine believed. But then, cutting through Palpatine's train of thought, Yoda said the following: "At an end your rule is, Emperor." Palpatine's response to this, a blend of incredulity and amusement, challenged the validity of Yoda's claims. It was then that Yoda, with a calm that belied the intensity of the moment, requested the scepter, which Obi-Wan was still carrying. As Yoda carefully took the scepter from Obi-Wan, Sidious, along with Anakin, Shakti, and even Mazameta, watched intently, each pondering the nature of the artifact. Yoda then took out the scepter from the bag, and then, as all including Sidious watched, Yoda, with a deep connection that seemed to draw the very light from the room, activated the scepter, and then he directed it towards Palpatine, following which an ethereal vortex of energy began to swirl around the Sith Lord. Palpatine's face contorted in horror and disbelief as he felt his connection to the dark side not just diminish, but completely evaporate. The once mighty Darth Sidious, master of manipulation and the wielder of immense dark power, quickly found himself frail. His strength snapped, leaving him nothing more than an old man, stripped of his malevolent force. The room then fell silent, the spectacle leaving everyone, even the Jedi, momentarily speechless. And it was now that Yoda offered an explanation of what had occurred, revealing that the scepter he was holding was actually the Scepter of Ragnos, an ancient dark side artifact that had the ability to siphon the dark side energy from a wielder of the dark side of the Force, rendering their ability to call upon the Force completely mute. This artifact was created by a Dark Lord of the Sith who went by Mark Ragnos. He created this roughly 5,000 years prior to the events of the Clone Wars, and at some point after Ragnos' death, the scepter found its way into the vast archives of the Jedi Order. And hearing all this, Palpatine realized that what Yoda had said was true, and in a last-ditch effort to salvage the situation, Palpatine feebly suggested his surrender, imploring Anakin for assistance that he should stand trial. However, before he could further articulate his plea, Yoda, with swift justice, ended the Sith Lord's life with the precise strike of his green lightsaber right through Palpatine's face, leaving Palpatine with an injury that no amount of Bacta could heal. The abruptness of everything left Anakin and the others in a state of almost comical disbelief. Their expressions a mixture of shock and bewilderment. Yoda then turned to face Masameda, informing him that, as Vice Chair of the Republic and Second Hand of Palpatine, he now carried the weight of Palpatine's former authority. Yoda told Ameda that he will need to align with them, emphasizing the necessity of his cooperation for the galaxy's sake. Yoda phrased this as more of a request, but everyone who listened to it realized that it wasn't really a request. And Masameda, recognizing the futility of resistance, agreed to Yoda's terms. Politically, Ameda's cooperation was rooted in survival and the pragmatic understanding that aligning with the victors in this seismic shift of power was his best course of action. And then following this, utilizing the Senate Chamber's galaxy-wide broadcasting system, Anakin, flanked by Obi-Wan, Shakti, and Yoda, and also Masameda, laid bare the full extent of Palpatine's treachery. Anakin, leveraging his reputation as the hero of the Clone Wars, was pivotal in revealing the truth of Palpatine's schemes and his misdeeds to the galaxy. And given the credibility afforded by Anakin's status within the Republic, the revelations were met with widespread acceptance rather than skepticism. And further, Ameda's confirmation of the Jedi's claims and his declaration that he was manipulated by Palpatine added an additional layer of legitimacy to the Jedi's claims. And following this, Ameda, using his authority with Palpatine being dead, formally rescinded Order 66, effectively stopping the Jedi Purge. And in the aftermath of all this, the galaxy saw the beginnings of peace once more. The Clone Wars had concluded, since General Grievous and Palpatine had both died. The Separatist command structure was no more, and shortly the Separatist leaders, mainly Newt Gunray, approached the Republic with terms of surrender, as they realized that they couldn't keep the fight going for much longer, not with all their leaders dead. And so the war came to an end. Luke and Leia were born, with Padme surviving the ordeal, altering Anakin's visions. This finally allowed Anakin to find some peace in his life for the first time in a long time. And the removal of the inhibitor chips from all the clones ensured the prevention of future betrayals. And the Jedi Order, though significantly diminished, began the slow process of rebuilding. And as for Ahsoka Tano, after surviving the events of the finale of the Clone Wars series, she too returned to the fold, contributing to the restoration of peace and the re-establishment of the Jedi Order. And so the galaxy at long last entered an era of peace. Its future bright with the promise of renewal and hope. Or was it? Scepter of Ragnos, if allowed to consume enough dark side energy, had the potential to revive the dead, so who knows, maybe someone will steal it and use it to revive Darth Bishop in the future. But something like that is unlikely. So what do you think? Will Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Anakin, and Yoda lead the Jedi Order into a new future in peace, or will things go terribly wrong? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and if you have the time and feel like supporting the channel, there is a link to my Patreon where for $1 or more a month you can get early access to videos and some exclusive content I'll be posting there, so do check that out if you have the time. Anyways, that's it. Goodbye. Stay hydrated.
That's that. Don't. And again, Star Wars Course channel in the description below, so you can check out their channel. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And don't forget to check out my playlist for my other reactions too. Bye for now. I'll see you guys next time.